There's all sorts of brands of gouache. Today I'm going to use the Arteza brand. A lot of people who aren't familiar with gouache and want to say, I want to try something, but I don't want to spend much money. I found Arteza to be a pretty good brand, pretty creamy colors, and this is just a collection of colors that I think I can use and play with some landscapes that I'm going to do. So the Arteza brand is what I'm going to use. So I also have Winsor Newton, which I really like. They're a more professional grade, and there's a variety out there, but we're going to start with those. Then it's like, what am I going to put my paints on? One of my favorite things is a porcelain piece. They come in all sorts of shapes. You can just get a plate out of the kitchen. I like to work with white so you can really see what the colors are. The reason why I like the porcelain is because it's easy to clean and it doesn't stain. Some of the plastic mixing trays will stain, and that's okay. Then I also have disposable palettes. See this, I did a gouache painting earlier, and I painted, taking the paint out of this container. This one is my current paint palette that is pretty dry. I'm not going to use this method today, working out of here, because it is so dry, and you can reactivate. I'm going to go ahead and spray it before I put it up again. So when you spray your paints, it helps, but some of this is really cracking and needs some more than just spraying. It needs stirring and chopping up. And so if you use a palette like this, before you stuff your paints in there, don't fill it so full so you have a space to stir it and mix it around before it falls into the other side of the compartment. So I'm not going to use that one today because that's probably not what you're going to start with. So, and you probably don't have disposable palettes. It's just that I love having this to mix on, and then if I want to use this color later, the joy of gouache is I can wet what I haven't used before and I can paint with it. So it's very economical when it comes to that. One of the things we're going to paint today is this about the mountains and the trees. It's just, let's see what this paint will do, and can we get a feeling of clouds. Here's sky blue. Here, I'm sorry, not sky blue, that was cerulean. And now here's sky blue. See, it leans more toward the purple. It'd be more like ultramarine blue with a little white. Oh, what color is this? Stone blue. That will not be. Ooh, no, not that. I guess we're doing rocks. That would be good. All right, that's two blues. I want a double primary palette. This is not a primary color. Oh, I don't even need this because I'm not even going to do the ground. So no sap green. I want some yellows. Okay. All right. Next primary is the pink, which is the family is called peach red. Doesn't look like peach at all. More of a hot pink. I know you think, oh, what in the world do I want that color for that picture? But it has some intensity that I really like. And there's some different colors in these clouds. There's some purple tones, and I'm going to need something to mix with the blues to create a purple tone, and that might be just the ticket. So, and this one is crimson red. That'll also make purple tones. Those are two blues, two red tones. The yellows, this one is mid-yellow, which is kind of like a cad yellow medium. Whoops, doesn't want to go back on, the lid didn't want to go back on, there we go. And yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is a very earthy, warm, it's cooler than that one. That's a warmer yellow, but earthiness. Always got to have some white. You'll go through more white with gouache than any other. Oops, look, I thought that was white. It's taupe. I don't want that. I want actual white. Now, look at this actual white. Is that actual white? Look at the clouds. Nope, there's color in those clouds. What color do you see? They're sort of yellow. So clouds, even the whites of the clouds, and I'm going to put more than one white out because I want to keep one pretty pure and one for mixing. So today's class, I would like you to get out a double primary, two blues, two reds, two yellows, and white. And let's see what we can do with our clouds. Next thing we need is paper. I decided I'm going to use some inexpensive student grade watercolor paper. You can get it at Hobby Lobby, Michael's. It's very accessible because that's probably what you would start with. This is a 140-pound cold press, and I have this little mat. I just want this little mat so that I can mark how big a 5x7 without having to measure. So that's how big our painting will be. And to make it simple, I'm going to take tape, painter's tape. Some people go, oh, don't use painter's tape because it's blue. It interferes with your color. But you know, painter's tape is very economical. Oh, if you're using masking tape, take it and hit it on your clothes a few times and then lay it down next to it. I'd put it where I can barely see the pencil, and then it'll get painted over. So I'm just going to keep this in the tablet. You can take it out and put it on a, you know, on a board if you want, but I'm just trying to be as simple as possible. Okay, if you have a tablet, watercolor paper, you have some tape. If you don't have tape, that's fine. You don't even have to draw an edge. You can paint the approximate size and then cut it down afterwards. But this gives it a clean edge when you remove the tape. So I just like it for that reason, if nothing else. Okay, so I want to press down pretty good right along here. And then I'm going to turn it this way because my painting is horizontal. Oh, that's not working. Let me turn it this way. There we go. So your colors might not be exactly like mine, and that is fine. Part of what we see here is a bit of sky comes in. I don't always draw ahead of time. I rarely do. So when I'm dealing with the clouds, I'm just looking at this curve here comes down. Got some darker clouds here. And it's definitely not gonna look like what we see there. But this is just kind of giving me and I can hardly see that, a lighter visual of where the lower clouds are. When I squint my eyes, and I want you to learn how to squint because squinting has been such a life changer for me in painting. When I squint my eyes, this gray of the clouds is very similar to the blue. It's a little darker in this particular picture, but so many times the gray shadow of the clouds is very similar to the blue in the background. Notice this blue is much lighter than this blue. So we're going to need to, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to mix both of these together and see what kind of tone I get. Oh, gotta have water for gouache. You don't want, I don't have a big puddle mixed here, but this would be kind of like if I was doing oil painting, how I would paint it with oils. I have this is a filbert brush, so I'm going to come in with this bright color that I have for this background. I'm keeping loose, soft edges. The paper that I'm working on is cold press. Cold press has some texture to it. You'll be able to see that, but when I wet it, I can spread it a little bit more. If I was painting in oil, the first layer is the thinnest, and it gets thicker as you go. And most oil paints, you start with dark and you work toward the light. But you don't have to do that with, see, I'm using the side of my brush rather than the width of my brush. You don't have to use, go dark to light, but the light of these clouds, I want to save that light so that when I do paint on it, I'm not painting over the blue. Because if I paint over the blue, then it's going to come through. But the joy of gouache, and see, I'm just guessing about where the joy of gouache is, you can paint light over dark, dark over light. It can go backwards. So now I have this lighter tone toward the bottom. I'm just see the joy of having the tape is you can just paint right over it, right up to the edge. The confusion of gouache to me is the light dries darker. Like this might be way too dark. I'm already feeling it is. So I'm gonna come back and paint right on top while it's still wet a lighter tone, and then just kind of go up just a little bit and lighten some of this as it goes up. So that gives me the foundation of the part of the sky that's the furthest away, and a gradation from light. I want this even lighter down here. up to dark. I'm going to rinse my brush out. I'm going to come back. I didn't dab it dry a little bit. I don't want it too gushy. Now I want to create a gray tone. All right, that's pretty decent. That almost looks like that color right there. So I think I'm going to go ahead and lay that in, although some white will be up under it. So we'll come back to that. But it's at least a foundation. We have some streakiness of some colors down here. I'm not worried too much because that's still too wet, but I want a little of this vibrant color. So it doesn't take much of that. Kind of like that, but it's a little too purple. When you add a tad bit of yellow to purple, because it's opposite on the color wheel, it tones it down. So now I'm going to come in and lay in some of this color on this undershadow part of the cloud. Do some little brush marks in there. I'm very loose with it, kind of dabby with it because it goes in different directions, and it's not. This is not the last layer, so keep that in mind. Okay, then it's getting a little yellower over here. Oh, that's a little weird color. Don't like that. Add a little more purple in there. And then a lot more white. I'm going to come back. There's not enough yellow in that. I'll come back. But I'm squinting my eyes to see where the tones are that the value to where I've got a good play on the value. I want that a little more golden in there. I'm going to come back on top of that, because that's too green. Now I'm reading it. It's too green, it's too purple, too blue. That's what painting is. You just, okay, that's too green. So I'm going to come back with that, tone that down. I want more purple, so I'm going to mix some more up. The two blues, a little bit of the alizarin, tiny bit of the pink to make it more vibrant. I'm going to tone it down just a little bit. That's probably too much yellow. Yeah, if it goes too brown, there we go, that's better. A little more pink in there. So another thing with gouache is thin to thick. So if you'll notice, I'm putting some pretty thin layers right now. And if you get it too thick, gouache will crack. So we don't want that to happen. But there's some color in here that is very light, and it even kind of fluffs away. You can lift up the paint if you have a good surface. If you wet something, you can lift off, and that's really nice to be that flexible. Okay, I like the warmth I'm seeing here. I need some of that warmth a little bit over in here because the sky reflects the ground. The ground reflects some of the sky, and so you want to have some warmth. Look for the warmth in your clouds, and notice that, man, there's all different colors: purples, grays, blues, yellows, pinks sometimes. That's really gray in there, but I'm going to go ahead and fill that. Okay, now I'm going to add more white to my yellow. So this is heavier paint. More white with a little bit of, ooh, that's too much yellow. Can you even see what I'm mixing? Can't tell. Yeah, I think you can. That's too dark. If something's too dark, then just come to the side of it and just change parts of it. So now I'm looking more toward specific areas. Ooh, that's too yellow. That I can add little bits of the cloud to. And a little puffiness down here. My paint's heavier, thicker. It's not real juicy. Some of you really like juicy paint. And you can make it juicier if you want. But the more fluid it is, the more it'll reactivate what's underneath. So you can see that this is a lot more fluid than what's below, because you can probably see the shine. Might need to change the shape of my brush, which is sometimes needed. I'm looking for some of the light in the clouds. Just a very, very light touch. Very, very light touch. Some of this is dry down here, so I can come in and add a little bit of color. Now, a lot of hard edges there, and I don't want a lot of hard edges. I want to come back with the dark gray on top of that, so I'm going to remix this darker color with the dark blue and the red. Again, I barely put out much paint. That's too dry. And the watercolor paper does absorb the paint, so if you don't like how quickly it absorbs, then you might want to try a gessoed finished board, and I'll tell you about some of those in a bit. Right now, this is warping quite a bit. I don't like the hard edges at all. So it's time to do a little shifting of color and manipulating of the paint. I'm getting a dry brush. It is a watercolor brush, and I added just a touch of water in it, and I'm softening water, my slightly damp brush. I'm helping this work into the paint, the texture of the paper. This is cold press. It has texture to it. You can see the texture as I work. I wet the brush. I come over. I soften the edges. Let that meld together and sink into the surface. Where there's hard edges, I can barely touch that, and I can soften them because it reactivates itself when it gets wet. So I love the fact that I can rework a place or lift up something that I didn't like or soften the edge. It's, again, a very light touch. If you scrub hard, you're going to lift up the blue that was underneath. But where I didn't put any blue underneath, it's a white surface. So that's what's getting these brighter tones, because there wasn't a dark color underneath. And so I'm just looking at the edges I've got, and if it bothers me, if I want it a little softer, I'm just tapping it and working the paint into the surface a little better. Like right here, that's very harsh. I don't like that. Little circular motions. This is one way that there's so many different methods to painting with gouache, and you can paint it. I'm going to show you several. This is one method where I'm starting thin, like in oil. In oil, it would still be soft and pliable, and I would be able to move it around without having to re-wet it. But because it's already dry, I'm coming back and touching it with this to maneuver the edges a bit. Okay, I want maybe a little more pure, thicker. Okay, so now that the edges are soft, I can come in with some of this heavier paint, more like an oil painter. I still need a little coloration in that. That is too white. There we go. That's more like what I see. And the fact that it's a smaller round brush, it mimics the shapes of the clouds a little better than the larger brush that I had out earlier. I don't like that hard edge. I'll come back to it. Also, while it's a little watery, I can add a little fluff of the clouds up here. I'm supposed to have a bed delivered today with Amazon, and I'm really hoping they don't deliver it today, because it's an extra bed, and I've tried to cancel the order multiple times. So I'm listening for a truck or, the sound of a vehicle outside. And we'll see. So if I have to stop and run away, I'll be back. If that's too watery. If it's too watery, just dab your brush. Let the paper towel absorb. You can also just touch the paper with it, and that helps as well. Okay, this is pretty bright down here. So look at where the light's coming from. Try to mimic what you see. This is a little too dark the way it dried, so I want to lighten that just a tad. I'll pick up what I already have here that's a little on the pink side and mix that in. I'm squinting my eyes to see I need a little more dark. A little more dark in here. A little more color variation over here. Just look for it. Don't worry. Oh, it's not going to look exact. It's not going to look exactly like it. It never will. But are you getting the feel of what's there? If you're getting the feel of what's there, then you're successful. You're fine. I want a little more dark in here. So I'm working thin. These are thin, wispy clouds. If it was a little heavier storm clouds, I'd probably work a little thicker. But I kind of want the paint to mimic what I'm looking at. And let me look at it from a different angle. Okay, I want a little bit more of this tiny, see, this dries really fast. I want a little bit in here where you see little bits just poking through. That's a little too heavy. I'll tone it down. A little bit in here, a little bit right here. Okay, but you tone it down by just coming back, touching it, lifting some of it while it's wet, or you can retouch it after it dries with a damp brush and move some of the color around. I'm seeing a little more pink in here, but again, we're going to do a lot of different paintings, and I want you to have time to play with this. Stop the video if you need to and rewind it. Pick a different cloud. We're going to do a lot of clouds. We're going to do a lot of skies. This is just one of them, and it's from a photo. Sometimes working from another painting is easier than working from a photo, but it's my photo, so I have permission. This right here draws my attention in sort of a negative way. So if my eye is drawn in a negative way, I'm going to soften that edge and move that line. And this right here is a little hard, so just going to soften that. Soft edges allow your eye to move from place to place. When you have a hard edge, it draws your attention. And right now that draws my attention the most, and that's okay. So, probably not the best demo for the very first thing you're going to do, because working with multiple colors in a new surface, so I'm not going to put this as your first. This won't be the first one that I post for you, because then you'll go, oh, I quit, I give up, I'm not doing this. Okay, but that gives a nice clean edge. And there's a sky. It's very similar to that one. It's not an exact match. It's not going to be. Totally dry, and we'll come back and look at it later.